My son's fiancée called my Purple Heart war junk and laughed about me being a damaged PTSD dad. My name is Steve Davis, and I'm a 57-year-old retired Army colonel. My son's fiancée, Amanda, thought she knew everything about me, from my quiet demeanor and old Ford pickup. She had no idea that my war souvenirs included the highest military decoration our country can give. When she crossed the line at our family barbecue, mocking my service and my fallen brothers, I made one phone call that changed everything. What happened next taught her the real cost of freedom and the price of disrespect. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I simply smiled and said, "Amanda, you're absolutely right about one thing. I am damaged. But you have no idea what that damage is worth. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from, especially if you have veterans in your family." Here's how a Memorial Day weekend barbecue turned into the most expensive lesson about respect Amanda Foster ever received. Let me paint you a picture of how Amanda saw me. I drive a 2003 Ford F-150 with 180,000 miles and faded blue paint. I shop at thrift stores. My usual uniform is $19 Wrangler jeans and a $24 Carhartt work shirt. When I'm nervous or startled, my hands shake from an old combat injury. Amanda noticed all of this. What she didn't notice was why. The first sign I was being dismissed came 3 months before the wedding. Amanda was showing off her engagement ring to friends at a restaurant. I happened to walk in wearing my usual work clothes, and I overheard her conversation. "Oh, that's Brandon's dad," she said, not bothering to lower her voice. "He has these little PTSD episodes sometimes. It's honestly kind of awkward. He just stares off into space and his hands start shaking." Her friends made sympathetic noises. One asked, "Does he get help for that?" "I don't know," Amanda shrugged. "Brandon says he's been to therapy, but honestly, I think some people just use their military service as an excuse to be antisocial. Like, we get it. You were in a war. Time to move on." I stood there for 30 seconds, listening to my service, my trauma, being reduced to inconvenience. Then I quietly turned around and left. The second sign came during wedding planning. Amanda had strong opinions about the reception speech lineup. "I really think we should skip having your dad speak," she told Brandon over dinner. "I mean, what if he has one of his moments? What if he breaks down talking about his army buddies or whatever? It would totally kill the mood." Brandon shifted uncomfortably. "Dad's actually a really good speaker, Amanda. He's got some great stories." "Stories about what? War stuff? Dead people?" Amanda's voice rose. "Brandon, this is our special day. I don't want people feeling sorry for your damaged dad. I want them celebrating us." That word, damaged, hit like a physical blow. But here's what Amanda didn't understand about damage. When you've lost 3 close friends to roadside bombs in Iraq, when you've carried their dog tags for 15 years, when you wake up some nights hearing their voices, that's not weakness. That's the price of caring about something bigger than yourself. When you retire after 23 years of active duty and choose to drive an old truck because you remember what it feels like to not know where your next meal is coming from, that's not poverty. That's perspective. When you shop at thrift stores because you've seen villages where children have no clothes at all, that's not being cheap. That's gratitude. But Amanda saw an old man who jumped at loud noises and drove a beat-up Ford. She saw someone who didn't fit into her Instagram-worthy wedding vision. Someone whose presence might require explanation to her sorority friends. The thing about being underestimated is that it gives you information. It tells you exactly what someone values. Amanda valued appearances over substance, comfort over character, image over integrity. She made one crucial mistake. She assumed that quiet meant weak. I've been quiet my whole adult life. Quiet during 23 years of military briefings, where I learned that the most powerful people in the room often speak last. Quiet during combat operations where noise gets people killed. Quiet during grief counseling after losing soldiers under my command. Quiet doesn't mean powerless. Sometimes it means you're calculating. As Memorial Day weekend approached and our family barbecue drew near, I could feel the tension building. Amanda's comments were getting bolder, her disrespect more public. She was testing boundaries, seeing how far she could push. She was about to find out that some boundaries, once crossed, change everything. The stakes were higher than Amanda realized, and frankly, higher than I wanted them to be. First, There was the financial reality. The wedding venue wasn't some rented hall. It was our family estate, a 4.2-acre colonial built in 1892, valued at $2.5 million, that had been in my late wife's family for 3 generations. I'd planned to gift it to Brandon and Amanda as their wedding present and future home. This wasn't just any property. The wraparound porch where Amanda planned her ceremony photos, that's where my wife Sarah and I had our first dance as newlyweds 30 years ago. The oak tree she wanted strung with fairy lights, that's where we buried our daughter's pet rabbit when she was 8, teaching her about love and loss. Every time Amanda walked through that house with her wedding planner, pointing at changes she wanted to make, talking about updating this old-fashioned dump, I felt something die inside me. She saw square footage and photo opportunities. I saw memories and sacred ground. But the money was just the beginning. The real stake was my relationship with Brandon. My son was caught between loyalties, and I could see it tearing him apart. He'd grown up hearing bedtime stories about military honor, about standing up for what's right, about protecting those who can't protect themselves. But now he was watching his fiancée mock those same values, and he was choosing silence over confrontation. "Dad, she doesn't mean it that way," he'd say after Amanda's latest comment about military guys or PTSD cases. "How does she mean it then?" I'd ask. He never had an answer. I was losing my son to someone who demanded he choose between her comfort and his father's dignity. Every time Brandon failed to defend me, every time he let Amanda's comments slide, I watched 30 years of father-son bonding erode. But the highest stake wasn't financial or even familial. It was about honor. You see, Amanda wasn't just insulting me. Every time she called my service medals war junk, every time she rolled her eyes at military stories, every time she made jokes about triggered veterans, she was insulting every soldier who never made it home. In my shadow box, alongside my Purple Heart, I keep 3 sets of dog tags. They belong to Sergeant First Class Mike Torres, Staff Sergeant David Kim, and Corporal Jennifer Walsh. Mike was 24 when he died protecting our convoy outside Fallujah. David was 26, killed by sniper fire while delivering medical supplies to a village clinic. Jennifer was just 22, lost to an IED while escorting school children to safety. Amanda called these men and women dead friends that I kept like trophies. She had no idea that Mike Torres had a daughter who was now 19, studying nursing on a scholarship funded by military death benefits. She didn't know that David Kim's parents still sent me Christmas cards, thanking me for bringing their son's body home. She couldn't comprehend that Jennifer Walsh died saving 37 children who grew up to become teachers, doctors, and parents themselves. When Amanda mocked my war souvenirs, she was mocking their sacrifice. When she suggested I was living in the past, she was dismissing the future they'd died to protect. When she called me damaged, she was spitting on graves marked with American flags. And my son, their fellow American, someone they'd died defending, was letting it happen. The stakes crystallized during a family dinner in early May. Amanda was scrolling through Instagram showing us photos from her friend's wedding. "Look how elegant this is," she said, holding up her phone. "No military stuff cluttering up the decor, no weird war stories during the speeches, just pure class." She looked directly at me. "Steve, I hope you understand that our wedding is going to be about moving forward, not dwelling on the past. Brandon and I represent the future. We're successful, educated, forward-thinking people." The implication was clear. I represented the past, the damaged past. That night I stood in my study looking at my shadow box. 3 Purple Hearts, 2 bronze stars, a silver star, 23 years of faithful service, letters from grateful families, commendations from 4 different commanding officers, and 1 document Amanda had never seen, my Medal of Honor certificate, signed by the President of the United States. I had to make a choice. I could stay silent, preserve family peace, and watch my son marry someone who held me, and by extension all veterans, in contempt. I could gift them the house, attend their wedding, and pretend her words didn't matter. Or I could draw a line in the sand and teach Amanda Foster that some disrespect carries a price tag. The decision was easier than you might think. Mike Torres, David Kim, and Jennifer Walsh deserved better then my silence. Memorial Day weekend was coming. Time to honor the fallen properly. Memorial Day weekend arrived with perfect weather. Sunny, 72 degrees, not a cloud in the sky. Perfect for our annual family barbecue. I was at the grill, cooking burgers for about 15 people. My extended family, a few neighbors, and of course, Brandon and Amanda. I was in my element. Oakley sunglasses, old Marine Corps t-shirt, tending the meat with the precision of someone who'd cooked for hungry soldiers. Amanda arrived fashionably late, wearing a white sundress that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. She had her phone out, recording everything for her Instagram story. It smells like a VFW haul in here," she announced, waving her hand in front of her nose. "All that charcoal smoke and military energy." A few people laughed nervously. I kept flipping burgers. She positioned herself near the patio table where my nephew Jake was telling stories about his recent college graduation. Jake's a good kid, 21, studying engineering, never served, but respects those who did. "You know what's so weird about military families?" Amanda said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "They're so obsessed with the past. Like, we get it, you went to war. But maybe focus on building something new instead of playing with old medals all the time." The conversation died. 15 people suddenly found their drinks very interesting. I walked over, spatula in hand. "Amanda, what exactly do you think I've been building?" "I don't know," she shrugged. "What have you been building? Besides, trauma." A few people gasped. My neighbor Frank, a Vietnam vet, set his beer down hard. "I've been building a family," I said quietly. "I've been building a life for my son. I've been building bridges between the military and civilian communities through volunteer work. What have you been building?" "A career," she shot back. "A real career. In marketing. In the modern world. Not sitting around talking about stuff that happened 20 years ago." 15 years ago, I corrected. And it wasn't stuff. It was service. Same difference. She took a sip of her wine. "Brandon, tell your dad we don't need a history lesson at our barbecue." Brandon looked like he wanted to disappear. "Amanda, maybe we should—" "Should what?" she interrupted. "Pretend this is normal? Pretend it's healthy to obsess over war stories? Brandon, your dad needs therapy, not an audience." That's when she crossed the line. "You know what I heard about military guys?" She looked around the group, enjoying her platform. "They're all damaged goods. They come back broken and expect everyone else to fix them. Like, take responsibility for your own life, Dead silence. "Amanda," I said, my voice dropping to the tone I used to use with subordinates who'd screwed up badly, "do you know what PTSD actually stands for?" "Post-traumatic something," she waved dismissively. "Some excuse for not moving on." "Post-traumatic stress disorder," I said slowly. "It's what happens when someone sees things that civilians never have to see. When someone does things that civilians never have to do. When someone loses friends that civilians never have to lose." "Right, exactly," she nodded, missing my point entirely. "So maybe get help instead of making it everyone else's problem." Frank stood up. My sister-in-law Carol put down her plate. The whole backyard felt like a bomb about to explode. "Amanda," I said, still in that deadly quiet voice, "I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you." She rolled her eyes. "Here we go. I've had therapy. Lots of it. Professional, qualified therapy from people who understand combat trauma. And do you know what they told me?" "That you're special?" She smirked. "They told me that PTSD isn't a weakness. It's a normal response to abnormal situations. They told me that hypervigilance, what you call paranoia, kept my soldiers alive in 3 combat deployments. They told me that survivor's guilt, what you call obsessing over dead friends, is actually love that has nowhere to go." Amanda's smirk was fading. "They told me that my damaged brain saved 247 American lives during Operation Iraqi Freedom. They told me that my war stories are historical testimony that future generations need to hear. They told me that my service medals aren't trophies. They're proof that when America needed someone to stand up, I stood up." The backyard was cemetery quiet. "But most importantly," I continued, "they told me that I don't owe anyone, especially not some 26-year-old marketing coordinator, an explanation for my trauma, an apology for my service, or permission to exist in my own family." Amanda's face was red. "I didn't—" "You did," I cut her off. You've been doing it for months. In restaurants, in our home, in front of my family, you've made it clear that you think I'm an embarrassment, a burden, and a problem to be managed. Brandon finally found his voice. Dad, please. No, Brandon. I turned to him. Your fiancée wants to know what I've been building. Let me tell her. I looked directly at Amanda. I built a life where people like you can stand in my backyard, drink my beer, eat my food, and insult my service without fear of consequences. I built a world where your biggest worry is whether your wedding photos will get enough Instagram likes. Amanda's mouth opened, but nothing came out. That freedom? I pointed around the backyard. It wasn't free, and the people who paid for it deserve better than your ignorance. She recovered her composure and laughed. Actually laughed. Wow, she said. Triggered much? That's when I smiled, really smiled. Amanda, you're absolutely right about one thing, I said. I am damaged. But you have no idea what that damage is worth. The barbecue ended awkwardly, with guests making polite excuses and leaving early. Amanda had retreated to Brandon's old bedroom, presumably to post about her traumatic encounter with her psycho future father-in-law on social media. I was cleaning the grill when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I recognized immediately. Pentagon switchboard. Steve Davis. Colonel Davis? This is Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer Hayes, Pentagon Liaison Office. I apologize for calling on a holiday weekend, but we have the Memorial Day ceremony briefing scheduled for tomorrow at 0800. Are you still available? I stepped away from the patio, lowering my voice. Of course, Jennifer. Remote briefing, or do you need me on site? Remote is fine, sir. We just need to finalize your remarks for the Arlington National Cemetery presentation. The Secretary of Defense specifically requested your input on the Gold Star Families program. Roger that. I'll be ready. Excellent, sir. Oh, and congratulations on the contract renewal. The $150,000 annual retainer for the Pentagon consulting work is well deserved. As I ended the call, I noticed Amanda standing in the kitchen doorway, wineglass in hand. She'd clearly heard the tail end of the conversation. Who was that? She asked, trying to sound casual. Work, I said simply. Work? I thought you were retired. I am retired. From active duty, she frowned. So what kind of work calls you on Memorial Day? The kind that doesn't stop for holidays. Before she could ask more questions, there was a knock at the front door. I walked through the house to answer it, Amanda trailing behind. A courier stood on my porch, holding a thick manila envelope marked with official seals. Colonel Stephen Davis? That's me. Delivery from the Pentagon Liaison Office. Signature required. I signed the electronic pad and took the envelope. The return address was clearly visible. Department of Defense, Office of the Secretary. Classification, official use only. Amanda's eyes went wide. What's that? Paperwork, I said, tucking the envelope under my arm. Pentagon paperwork? For what? I looked at her for a long moment. Amanda, you said I needed to get a real job and stop living in the past, right? She nodded uncertainly. Well, some of us have already moved into the future. We just don't feel the need to broadcast it at barbecues. I started to walk away, then turned back. Oh, and Amanda? That war junk you were talking about? Some of it comes with ongoing responsibilities. Responsibilities that pay quite well. Her mouth opened, but I was already heading to my study. Later that evening, Brandon knocked on my office door. I was reading through the Pentagon briefing materials, classified updates on veteran mental health programs that I'd be presenting to Congress next month. Dad, can we talk? Of course. I closed the folder and gave him my full attention. He sat down heavily. Amanda feels really bad about today. She says she didn't mean to insult your service. What do you think she meant to do? Brandon was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, Dad. I really don't. But she's upset. She's worried you don't approve of her. Brandon, do you know what I do for work now? He looked surprised by the question. I thought you were fully retired. You know, getting your disability benefits. Maybe doing some volunteer work. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a business card. Davis Defense Consulting, LLC, Strategic Military Advisory Services. I handed it to him. His eyebrows shot up. Dad, what is this? It's what I built after I moved on from my military service. It's how I turned my war experience into something valuable for current defense operations. I had no idea. That's because I don't believe in bragging about success. I believe in demonstrating it. Brandon studied the business card. Amanda doesn't know about this. Amanda doesn't know about a lot of things, I said quietly. The question is, do you want her to learn, or do you want to keep protecting her from reality? He left without answering, but I could see the wheels turning in his head. Some lessons can't be taught with words. Some people have to learn the expensive way. The engagement party was held at Riverside Country Club on Saturday evening, May 26th. Amanda had insisted on the venue. $8,500 for the evening, with another $12,000 for catering. Her parents were footing the bill, clearly trying to impress their social circle. The party was everything Amanda had dreamed of. Elegant lighting, premium open bar, a professional photographer capturing every moment for her Instagram feed. About 80 guests filled the main ballroom, a mix of her sorority friends, work colleagues, and extended family. I arrived at 7 p.m. wearing my best suit, a navy blue Brooks Brothers that I'd owned for 15 years, but still looked sharp. Sarah had picked it out for military formal events. I felt her presence with me as I walked into that room full of people who thought they knew exactly who I was. Amanda was holding court near the champagne fountain, regaling her friends with animated stories. As I approached, I caught fragments of her conversation. So then he goes into this whole speech about PTSD and trauma, like we're supposed to feel sorry for him. It was so embarrassing. Her friend Brittany gasped dramatically. "Oh my God, what did you do?" I basically told him to get over it. I mean, the war was like 15 years ago. At some point, you have to stop using it as an excuse for antisocial behavior. The group laughed. One of them, a woman in her 30s wearing too much jewelry, chimed in, "Military guys are always so intense. My ex was Air Force, and he was constantly talking about honor and duty. Like, calm down, you're not saving the world anymore." More laughter. Amanda spotted me approaching and raised her voice slightly. "Oh, here comes my future father-in-law now." "Steve, we were just talking about you." "Were you?" I said mildly. "Yes, I was telling everyone about your collection, all those war souvenirs you keep in that little box." She turned back to her audience. "He's got this whole shrine to dead people in his office. It's honestly kind of creepy. Like, I get that you miss your army buddies, but keeping their dog tags like trophies? That's just weird." The laughter died. A few people looked uncomfortable. "They're not trophies, Amanda," I said quietly. Right, they're sacred or whatever." She made air quotes. "But come on, Steve. At some point you have to let go of the past and focus on the living. Brandon and I are your future now." She gestured toward her friends. "These are successful, accomplished people. We're building careers, making money, contributing to society in meaningful ways. Maybe it's time to stop dwelling on stuff that happened when you were young and start thinking about what really matters." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "And what really matters, Amanda?" "Success. Progress. Moving forward. Not sitting around polishing old medals and telling war stories that nobody wants to hear." One of her friends, a guy in his late 20s wearing a $1,000 watch, nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. I mean, no offense to veterans and all, but there comes a point where you have to get with the program. The business world, the modern world, doesn't care about what you did in some desert 20 years ago." 15 years, I corrected automatically. "Whatever," Amanda waved dismissively. "The point is, we're past all that now. We're educated professionals with real responsibilities. Brandon's in tech, I'm in marketing. Our friends are in finance and consulting and law. We're the people who actually run the country now." She looked directly at me. "With all due respect, Steve, your generation's time is over. You guys fought your wars, and we appreciate that, I guess. But now it's time to let the grown-ups handle things." The room had gone very quiet. I could feel people watching, sensing tension. "The grown-ups?" I repeated. "People who understand how the modern world works. People who create value instead of just reminiscing." That's when she made her fatal mistake. She turned to the crowd and raised her champagne glass. "You know what?" she announced. "I think Steve's collection gives me an idea for a toast. Oh no. To all the men and women who played soldier when they were young so that people like us could grow up to build the real America." She giggled. "Thanks for your service and all that, but it's our turn now." Several people gasped. An older gentleman near the bar, I later learned he was a Korean War veteran, stood up and walked out. Amanda was drunk on attention and champagne. She wasn't done. I mean, let's be honest, she continued, swaying slightly. How hard could it really have been? You guys got free food, free housing, free healthcare, and all you had to do was follow orders. Meanwhile, people like us had to actually work for our success. We had to compete, innovate, create value in the marketplace. She pointed at me. Steve here got to play hero for a few years, and now he thinks that entitles him to respect for the rest of his life. But what has he actually accomplished lately? What's his contribution to society now? The silence was deafening. Amanda, Brandon appeared at her side, his face pale. Maybe you should... Should what? Stop telling the truth? She was fully committed now, riding the wave of her own performance. Your dad keeps talking about sacrifice and service, but what did he actually sacrifice? A few years of his youth? Meanwhile, real people were building careers, starting businesses, raising families in the real world. She gestured grandly around the room. Look at this. Look at what we've accomplished. This party cost $20,000, and we earned every penny of it through actual work, not through some government welfare program disguised as military service. I walked slowly to the front of the room. The DJ noticed the commotion and turned down the music. May I have everyone's attention? I said calmly. The room fell silent. I pulled out my phone and made a call. Jennifer, it's Steve. I'm sorry to bother you on a Saturday evening, but there's been a change of plans regarding tomorrow's Memorial Day ceremony. Yes, I'll need to make the presentation in person after all. The one about sacrifice and service. Yes, that one. I hung up and looked at Amanda, who was staring at me with growing confusion. Amanda, you asked what I've accomplished lately and what my contribution to society is. I smiled. Tomorrow morning at Arlington National Cemetery, I'll be presenting the Congressional Gold Medal to the families of fallen soldiers. The ceremony is being broadcast live on C-SPAN. The Secretary of Defense will be there, along with about 300 Gold Star families. Her face went white. But tonight, I continued, I have a more immediate contribution to make. I looked around the room at 80 pairs of eyes. The wedding venue situation has changed. You could have heard a pin drop in that ballroom. Amanda's champagne glass trembled in her hand. What do you mean the venue situation has changed? She asked, her voice suddenly smaller. Before I could answer, my phone rang. Perfect timing. Steve, I need to take this, I answered on speakerphone. Colonel Davis, this is Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer Hayes calling back. I wanted to confirm your security clearance status for tomorrow's Arlington ceremony. Go ahead, Jennifer. Top secret/SCI clearance is current through 2026. Pentagon building access is approved. Your +1 for the VIP section has been confirmed. Amanda's mouth fell open. A woman near the bar whispered, Did she just say Colonel? Thank you, Jennifer. One more thing. Can you remind me of the contract renewal amount that came through last week? Yes, sir. Davis Defense Consulting's annual Pentagon retainer has been increased to $150,000, with the additional congressional briefing fees bringing your total annual government consulting income to approximately $300,000. Several people gasped. Amanda looked like she might faint. Perfect. I'll see you at 0800 tomorrow at Arlington. Yes, sir, Colonel. Have a good evening. I hung up and looked around the room. 80 faces stared back at me, processing what they'd just heard. Now then, I said calmly, where were we? Oh yes, Amanda was explaining how military service is just a government welfare program. Amanda tried to speak, but no words came out. Jennifer Hayes, by the way, is my former subordinate. Brilliant officer. She runs Pentagon liaison operations now, coordinating between military leadership and civilian defense contractors. I paused. People like me. A man near the champagne fountain stepped forward. I recognized him. Country club member, probably in his 60s. Excuse me, he said, but did she just call you Colonel Davis? That's correct. His eyes widened. Steve Davis. Davis Defense Consulting. Wait a minute. He pulled out his phone and typed quickly. Are you the Steve Davis who won the Medal of Honor in Iraq? The room exploded into whispers. Medal of Honor? Someone gasped. That's the highest military decoration? Another voice added. Amanda's face had gone from white to green. Medal of... what? The older gentleman was reading from his phone. Colonel Stephen J. Davis, Medal of Honor recipient, 2009. Citation reads, For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty, while serving as company commander, 1st Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, during Operation Enduring Freedom. He looked up from his phone. Sir, you saved 47 soldiers when your convoy was ambushed. You single-handedly held off enemy forces for 6 hours while evacuating wounded personnel. 47 soldiers who went home to their families, I said simply. 47 soldiers who got to see their children grow up. The whispers grew louder. People were pulling out their phones, searching for more information. A woman near the bar called out, "It says here you also have 2 Purple Hearts and 3 Bronze Stars." Another voice, "And a Silver Star." Amanda slumped into a chair. "I don't understand. You drive an old truck. You shop at thrift stores. You live so simply." "Amanda," I said gently, "let me explain something about real wealth." I gestured around the room. "This party cost $20,000. That's a nice evening. But do you know what I spent $20,000 on last month?" She shook her head mutely. "Scholarships. For children of fallen soldiers. Kids whose parents died serving this country, so they can go to college debt-free." I pulled out my wallet and removed a business card. Davis Defense Consulting doesn't just advise the Pentagon. We also run a nonprofit foundation. Last year, we gave away $500,000 in educational grants. I handed her the card. "The old truck I drive? It's paid for. The thrift store clothes I wear? They keep me grounded. The simple life I live? It allows me to put more money toward things that matter." Brandon appeared beside Amanda, his face a mixture of shock and dawning understanding. "Dad," he whispered, "I had no idea." "Son, I've been trying to teach you something important. Real success isn't about showing off. It's about service. It's about using whatever power you have to lift up others." I turned back to Amanda. "You asked what I've accomplished lately. Here's a partial list. I advise Congress on veteran mental health policy. I consult for the Pentagon on military training protocols. I serve on the board of directors for 3 veteran service organizations. I've testified before Senate subcommittees 6 times in the past 2 years. The room was dead silent. "But most importantly," I continued, "I honor the memory of soldiers who didn't make it home. Every decision I make, every dollar I spend, every word I speak, I ask myself if it would make Mike Torres, David Kim, and Jennifer Walsh proud." Amanda's voice was barely a whisper. "Who are they?" "The 3 soldiers whose dog tags you called trophies. Mike died at 24, protecting a convoy of medical supplies. David died at 26, defending a village school. Jennifer died at 22, saving 37 children from a bombing." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folded newspaper clipping. This is from last week's Washington Post. "Hidden Heroes. Local Medal of Honor recipient quietly transforms veteran care." It's a feature story about my congressional testimony on PTSD treatment funding. I handed it to her. The article mentions that my war junk, as you called it, helped secure $50 million in new veteran mental health funding. Amanda stared at the newspaper clipping, her hands shaking. "Now," I said, addressing the room, "about that venue situation I mentioned." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. The room watched in absolute silence as I unfolded it. "This is a property deed transfer," I announced, "executed this afternoon at 3:47 p.m., notarized and filed with Fairfax County." Amanda's face went from green to ash gray. "The Davis family estate, 4.2 acres, colonial home built in 1892, assessed value $2.5 million, has been donated to the veterans of foreign wars, post 1234. Gasps echoed around the ballroom. The sale price was $1.8 million, representing a $700,000 charitable tax deduction. I looked directly at Amanda. "That donation will fund a new memorial garden for fallen soldiers. A memorial garden where Gold Star families can find peace." Amanda tried to speak, but only managed a strangled sound. "The property transfer is irrevocable and was completed legally this afternoon. The wedding scheduled for June 15th at that location can no longer proceed as planned." Brandon stepped forward, his face pale. "Dad, you sold the house?" "I donated it, son." "There's a difference." But Amanda's parents already put down deposits. The catering, the flowers, the photographer. Non-refundable deposits, I'm afraid." I folded the deed transfer back up and tucked it into my pocket. "Emergency venue bookings in June will run approximately $45,000 for a comparable location. That's assuming any are available on such short notice. Amanda finally found her voice. You can't do this. That house was supposed to be our wedding gift. Amanda, I said calmly, gifts are earned through respect, not demanded through entitlement. The country club manager, a man named Robert, who I'd seen around but never spoken to, approached us cautiously. Excuse me, he said, but I couldn't help overhearing. Are you Colonel Stephen Davis? I am. His face lit up. Sir, you probably don't remember me, but I was Sergeant Robert Mitchell, 82nd Airborne. I served under you briefly in 2004 before my injury sent me home. I studied his face. Mitchell, yes, I remember. Shrapnel wound in your left leg. Helicopter accident during a supply run. That's right, sir. You visited me in the hospital in Germany, told me that healing was another form of service. Amanda looked back and forth between us, confusion mixing with growing horror. Sergeant Mitchell, I said, I'm glad to see you doing well. Thanks to you, sir. Your letter of recommendation helped me get this job when I came home. This club has been good to me for 15 years. He turned to address the room. Ladies and gentlemen, you're in the presence of a genuine American hero. Colonel Davis didn't just win the Medal of Honor. He earned it by saving every man in his unit when we were surrounded by enemy forces. The room erupted in applause. Amanda sank deeper into her chair. But Colonel, Robert continued, what you probably don't know is that your testimony to Congress last year helped secure funding for the veteran job placement program that's helped over 200 former soldiers find civilian employment. More applause. The war junk this young lady was mocking? Sir, that junk represents legislation that's changed thousands of lives. I raised my hand to quiet the applause. Thank you, Sergeant Mitchell. But we're here to celebrate Brandon and Amanda's engagement. I turned to Amanda, who was now visibly trembling. Amanda, you said that military service was a welfare program, and that real Americans build value in the marketplace. You're absolutely right about building value. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. Davis Defense Consulting has built considerable value. Our client list includes the Pentagon, 3 major defense contractors, and the Veterans Administration. Annual revenue last year was $8.2 million. Her mouth fell open. The old truck I drive is one of 12 vehicles I own, including the BMW and Mercedes parked in climate-controlled storage. I drive the Ford because it reminds me where I came from. I swiped to another screen. This is my stock portfolio. $4.7 million in diversified investments, managed by Goldman Sachs. The thrift store clothes? They're a choice, not a necessity. Brandon grabbed the phone, staring at the numbers. Dad, you're wealthy. Yes, son, very wealthy. Wealthy enough to donate a $2.5 million house to honor fallen soldiers without affecting my retirement plans. I looked around the room. The difference between Amanda and me isn't money. It's values. She measures success by what you accumulate. I measure it by what you contribute. Amanda's voice was barely audible. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I corrected. You saw what you expected to see. An old, damaged veteran living in the past. You never asked about my work, my achievements, or my contributions to society. I walked to the bar and picked up a champagne glass, holding it high. So let me propose a toast, I announced to the room, to the 47 soldiers who went home to their families because of one night in Iraq. To Mike Torres, David Kim, and Jennifer Walsh, who didn't. To every veteran who traded their youth for your freedom. And to the lesson that respect isn't given, it's earned. The room raised their glasses in solemn toast, everyone except Amanda. The wedding will need a new venue, I concluded. I suggest you start looking tomorrow. Good venues book quickly, especially when you're planning on someone else's dime. I finished my champagne and set the glass down. Brandon, when you're ready to have a real conversation about what kind of man you want to be and what kind of woman deserves to be your wife, you know where to find me. I walked toward the exit, stopping only when Amanda called out desperately, Wait! I'm sorry, I didn't mean... I turned back. Amanda, apologies without changed behavior are just manipulation. You meant every word you said. The only thing you're sorry about is getting caught. With that, I left the ballroom, leaving behind 80 stunned guests and one very expensive lesson about the cost of disrespecting those who serve. The aftermath came swift and merciless. By Sunday morning, Amanda's performance at the engagement party had gone viral. Someone had recorded her toast to veterans and posted it on TikTok with the caption, "Entitled Bride Mocks Medal of Honor Recipient." The video hit 2.3 million views in 18 hours. The comments were brutal. "This woman just disrespected America's highest military honor. Disgusting. Imagine mocking a war hero at your own engagement party. She called his Purple Heart war junk. What is wrong with people?" By Monday afternoon, Amanda's employer had seen the video. Sterling Marketing Solutions terminated her employment due to conduct incompatible with company values. They released a public statement distancing themselves from her comments. Her Instagram account, which had been her pride and joy with 15,000 followers, documenting her influencer lifestyle, became a battlefield. Veterans groups shared the story. Military families expressed outrage. Even people with no military connection were appalled by her behavior. She tried to control the damage with an apology post. "I want to apologize for my poorly chosen words at a private family event. I have the utmost respect for our veterans and their service." The response was immediate and harsh. "Too late. We heard what you really think. Private event? You mocked a Medal of Honor recipient in front of 80 people. This is who you really are. Deal with the consequences." Her sorority sisters began distancing themselves. The country club where her family held membership received dozens of calls demanding they reconsider their association with the Foster family. But the real consequences were more personal and immediate. Brandon called me Tuesday morning, his voice shaky. "Dad, I need to talk to you." We met at a diner near his apartment. Neutral ground. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I've been thinking about everything that happened," he said, stirring his coffee nervously. "About what Amanda said, about how I just stood there. And I'm ashamed, Dad. I'm ashamed that I let her talk about you that way. I'm ashamed that I didn't defend you. I'm ashamed that I didn't know about your work, your success, your—" He struggled for words. "Your real life." I waited. She's been calling nonstop since the video went viral. Crying, apologizing, begging me to make this go away. But Dad, you can't make ignorance and cruelty go away. You can only learn from it. "What are you thinking, son?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I'm thinking that if someone can mock a Medal of Honor recipient, my father, in public, then they don't have the character to be my wife." 3 days later, Brandon ended the engagement. Amanda's family was facing their own reckoning. The $45,000 emergency venue deposit for a replacement wedding location was the least of their problems. Their social circle had essentially excommunicated them. Mrs. Foster was removed from the hospital charity board, where she'd served for 8 years. Mr. Foster's law firm asked him to take a leave of absence while the controversy died down. The local newspaper, the Fairfax Times, ran a follow-up story. Community rallies around Medal of Honor recipient after public humiliation. The article detailed my charitable work, my consulting business, and the property donation to the VFW. It also mentioned that Amanda Foster had declined to comment. The most satisfying consequence came from an unexpected source. Robert Mitchell, the country club manager, called me personally. "Colonel Davis, the club's board of directors met yesterday. We voted unanimously to revoke the Foster family's membership. We also voted unanimously to offer you honorary membership if you're interested." I declined politely. I preferred my quiet life. But perhaps the most important consequence was the conversation I had with Brandon the following weekend. "Dad, I want to learn," he said, "about your service, about your work, about the things that really matter. I've been living in a bubble, focused on tech jobs and career advancement, and impressing people who don't actually matter. What do you want to know?" "Everything. I want to know about Mike Torres, David Kim, and Jennifer Walsh. I want to understand what you went through, what you've built since then, and how I can honor their memory too." For the first time in months, I felt genuinely proud of my son. "There's something else," he said. "I've been researching military history programs. George Mason University has a graduate program in military and veteran studies. I'm thinking about applying. Why? Because I want to understand the sacrifice you and others made. I want to be able to speak intelligently about military service and veteran issues. I want to make sure that what happened with Amanda never happens again in our family." I reached across the table and shook my son's hand. "Mike Torres would be proud of you," I said. "So would David Kim and Jennifer Walsh." "Dad, Yes? Thank you for teaching me the difference between success and significance. The most expensive lessons are often the most valuable ones. 6 months later, I was invited to give a speech at the annual Veterans Day ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery. As I stood at the podium looking out at thousands of Gold Star families, active duty service members, and veterans, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The property donation to the VFW had created something beautiful. The memorial garden was completed in September, featuring a bronze statue of 3 soldiers, representing Mike Torres, David Kim, and Jennifer Walsh, surrounded by native Virginia wildflowers. Gold Star families now had a quiet place to remember their fallen heroes. Brandon had been accepted into the military history program at George Mason. His first semester research project was on post-traumatic stress disorder and veteran reintegration, a topic he approached with genuine respect and scholarly rigor. He'd also started volunteering at the local VA hospital, reading to wounded veterans and helping with administrative tasks. I want to understand what service really means, he told me. Not just military service, but service to something bigger than yourself. Amanda Foster had moved back to her hometown in Ohio. Last I heard, she was working at her uncle's insurance agency and staying off social media entirely. The viral video had taught her a lesson about the permanence of words spoken in anger and ignorance. My consulting business continued to thrive. The Pentagon had expanded my contract to include briefings for new officers on veteran mental health and PTSD awareness. Young military leaders were learning that strength comes in many forms, including the strength to seek help and the strength to honor those who didn't make it home. But perhaps the most important change was in my own family's dynamic. The new boundary was crystal clear. Respect for military service and veteran sacrifices was non-negotiable, not just for my service, but for all veterans. Brandon understood this now, and any future relationships he pursued would be evaluated through this lens. "Dad," he said during one of our weekly dinners, "I've been thinking about what you said that night at the engagement party, about how you measure success by what you contribute, not what you accumulate. And I want to contribute something meaningful too. The tech job pays well, but it doesn't matter. Not the way your work matters." 3 months later, Brandon accepted a position with a nonprofit organization that provides job training and placement services for veterans transitioning to civilian life. The pay cut was significant, but his purpose was clear. "I can't serve in the military like you did," he said, "but I can serve those who did." On Memorial Day 2025, exactly 1 year after the barbecue that changed everything, we held our family gathering in the new memorial garden at the VFW property. This time, the guests included Gold Star families, local veterans, and community members who understood the true meaning of service and sacrifice. As I stood near the bronze statue representing my fallen brothers, I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in years. The property had found its right purpose. My son had found his calling, and I had found a way to honor Mike, David, and Jennifer's memories that would last long after I was gone. The lesson was complete. Real strength doesn't need to prove itself through displays of wealth or power. Real strength serves others. Real honor comes from lifting up those who sacrificed everything for principles greater than themselves. And sometimes, the most expensive education money can buy is learning the difference between being impressive and being respectable. If you're watching this story from somewhere in the world, I'd love to know where you are. And if you have veterans in your family or community, take a moment to thank them, not just for their service, but for the quiet strength they continue to demonstrate every day. Remember, freedom isn't free, but respect doesn't cost anything at all. It just requires the wisdom to recognize what's truly valuable in this world. Some gifts are priceless, some lessons are expensive, and some boundaries, once established, protect what matters most.